Honestly unbalanced.
You made me feel a bit bad about myself this morning, to be honest. I felt quite seen. Your video, I don't know when you posted it, but about alarm clocks and snooze.
Yeah, sorry.
And so to put Holly, I haven't told Holly about this. What you phrase it? What did you say?
If you are someone that regularly hits the snooze button, what you're basically saying is that you hate waking up so much that you do it multiple times per day.
Yeah, and that made me feel bad.
That's pretty much you, isn't it?
Yeah. But this surprises me because, of course, your background is like you're a party boy, and you still do that to some degree. And like, so at what point did you think? Did you manage your getting up routine? Because I'm still struggling. So at what point did you seize the day and take control of that?
I watched Matthew Walker on Joe Rogan.
Oh, yes.
And he just deep-throated this red pill down me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm killing myself. I'm literally killing myself with this job. So the World Health Organization, they consider any type of shift work now as a health risk. So if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're somebody that works nights as an engineer or as a petrol station assistant or whatever, it's a health risk, and club promoters and nightlife get thrown into that as well. So yeah, I just decided to make a commitment to try and focus on sleep a bit more. And then since COVID happened, all nightclubs in the UK were shut. And for the first time since I was an adult, I had a stable sleep and wake pattern, which is a dream.
But how does that relate? I get the idea of more sleep, and like we listen to that podcast, and we've been really.
He's a life changer.
We're like 9 hours at the moment. Yeah. But how does that relate to the snooze? Did Matt Walker talk about that? I don't recall.
No. So for me, the snooze it's more a psychological than a physiological thing for me. It's literally the first thing that you do every day, and I know that on the days when I get up and get after it, even if I don't want to, that the rest of my day feels good because I've taken control. I've commanded the very first action of the day. And there's some things that you can do to make this easier. So I have a sunrise alarm clock, which wakes me up with light rather than just with sound. And I've just recently, within the last month, got a chili pad Oola, which is a liquid-cooled mattress topper. But the newest one, the Oola, you can set schedules throughout the night of how hot you want the bed to be so that it aligns with different sort of physiological clocks. You want it to be this cool after you get in and then a bit cooler in the middle of the night. And it also has a heat wake-up setting, so you can have your alarm clock can come up with light as your bed warms up.
And you get burned.
And if you think, no, it's not that hot. I think it maxes out. It doesn't max out that warm. But if you think about trying to replicate what would have happened ancestrally, the sun rises, it's brighter, the temperature rises, you wake up. So, I don't know. That's my bro science anyway.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
They're expensive, aren't they, as well? They're a fair...
800 quid for a half, yeah, or about 1,300 quid for a full. Yeah.
What do you think will happen when you go back to being out a little bit more? So obviously, we've had full control in this period over our life to some degree, and getting up, working from where we want to work. Do you think we'll be able to maintain the changes you've made?
So I won't go back to working nights again. That's a decision that I've made with my business partner, and we've sort of repurposed the business so that I cover. He recently had a little one, another one, he's terrifyingly fertile, and I covered him on that week. But for the most part, I'm not going to go back to staying up till 3 a.m, multiple nights per week. It's just not happening. I've served my time.
You talk about the Matthew Walker podcast. I think he also talks about coffee, and I did actually implement this in my life. I stopped drinking coffee after a certain amount of time, but then you just went and ruined my life again with a post that you put up about how coffee is really bad for you within the first 90 minutes of waking up, and that you drink salt water every morning. I feel like that must be a lie.
So, not that it's bad for you, just that it's pointless, which I'm not sure if that's better or worse.
Oh, that's okay. I can deal with that.
Yeah, it's not bad for you. You're not doing anything to harm yourself. You're just not taking advantage of the rhythms of how your body works. So, again, I'd bro scienced my way through this. Fuck, man. I'd like read this or seen this in some podcast forever ago and was just spouting it out as if it was pure fact for 2 years and living my life by it. And then Andrew Huberman from Stanford did a full daily routine episode about a month and a half ago. One of the first things he said was, really don't want to be taking caffeine within the first 90 minutes of the day. And I was like, fucking yes, I'm so right. I knew I was correct with that. Finally felt vindicated. But yeah, basically your adenosine system, which is what the caffeine binds to stop you from feeling tired, that doesn't tend to be active for the first 90 minutes of the day, but your adrenal system does. Salt acts on your adrenal system. So if you have a large cold glass of water with some salt in, with some lemon juice, or Element, the salt sticks that I use, which is sodium, potassium, and magnesium, like in an optimal blend, those on a morning, you get the adrenal kick. You have less caffeine consumption throughout the day because you've lowered your total overall caffeine. And then when you do have your first cup of coffee, 90 minutes to 2 hours into the day, you genuinely feel that. So a lot of the time people will have that coffee and then they'll still be like, I kind of really need another one. I'm not that awake. Well, of course not, because the drink you've just taken is acting on a system that isn't active at the moment.
How do you retain this information? In that you speak to an inordinate amount of people every week, and you're researching them, I'm sure. And you talk about bro science or whatever, but there's lots of little tidbits that you pick up along the way. And I don't get how you retain that information, because when you have an episode, you will constantly pluck things out of your head. And I will read like Tim Ferriss's, what was it? Which one was it?
Tools of Titan.
That one.
See? He did it again. He just remembers.
And I made loads of notes. I had my phone with me making notes all the way through. Nothing has gone in my head. Maybe like one anecdote I recall.
Very different. You guys will learn this from doing the podcast. It's very different being an active participant in a conversation versus just listening to something. Hugely different. Because you're there and you're thinking about it and you're thinking about the question that you're going to ask. And I don't know, man, like throw enough shit at the wall and some of it will stick. Yeah. I think that's kind of the way that I've retained stuff.
But the danger is how, I guess, fallible our memory is. Like, we think that the shit has stuck in the exact same formation that the shit landed. But that shit slides down. And it slides down the mirror, and rain goes on it and stuff. And suddenly, what you're then talking about is shit.
So speaking of retention and Tim Ferriss, for a while, I tried to have a really well-organized external note system, and I was going to build a second brain, and everything would be beautifully indexed and tagged and color-coded. And I'm just not built like that. Like, I'm not administratively minded at all. And Tim Ferriss has this concept called the good shit sticks. And basically what he says is, if a concept resonates with you that much, you'll remember it. And if it doesn't, then it probably didn't matter. So a lot of the time, I think, because we're overblown with an abundance, a surplus of information, and we get this sort of like FOMO anxiety around all of the things that we could have learned or should have learned and couldn't retain and couldn't recall. Whereas Tim just says, look, like, just allow the natural evolution of whatever matters to you to rise back up to the surface. And since doing that, I know it's a get out of jail free card, but since adopting that approach, I feel a lot more free with things. It's like, look, if I do an hour and a half with someone that's really interesting, great conversation, perfectly entertaining, but nothing, I can't recall anything particularly from it the next week. It's like, well, fine. Like, it wasn't meant to be, and it relieves the pressure. It's good.
I always feel like you retain and remember the things that you're supposed to also share with other people. Maybe that's the hippie part of me coming out, but for instance, I teach yoga, but I'm terrible with the anatomy. I can just go over and over the bones and the names of everything, but it never sticks. So I end up teaching the things that resonate with me, the more floaty, esoteric stuff, and that sticks, and that's what people resonate with. And yeah, maybe it's to do with what you're supposed to share with the world as well. Different perspective.
And I think we're not, as human beings, really meant to retain that much information on such a diversity of topics, coming from such a diversity of sources. I don't think we're made for it. I could be wrong. That's just an excuse.
No. Well, we would have had definitely, we've got far more of an abundance of information than we would be used to. There is absolutely no way that humans are supposed to consume the entire world's news in real time, 24 hours a day. No. Like, it's just we're not built for it. So what the competitive advantage now comes from being someone who can discriminate rather than forage. So it's not about finding more information, it's about getting rid of the information that you don't need and focusing on what you do.
And how, in terms of the guests that you have on then, do you look for guests that you know that you would resonate with, or whose arguments you already support, or do you really actively look for a diversity? So even if someone doesn't appear that interesting to you from a purely subjective standpoint, will you still try and bring them on?
No. No, it's just the entire podcast is a glorified excuse for me to have conversations with interesting people, and apparently the internet listens as well. That's literally it. Like, I'd do it if no one listened, and if all the sponsors fucked off tomorrow. I couldn't think of anything that I would rather do at 6 p.m. every weeknight than speak to some interesting people. And all that having an audience now has done is permit me to get a bit of prestige and to access bigger name guests. That's really it.
Do you have a list of dream guests, and have you got through much of it, if so?
Yeah, I did when I first started. I did. So Aubrey Marcus, the CEO of Onnit, he was up there. He's a fucking cool dude. He's back on next Tuesday, actually. Jordan Peterson was a huge one, and I managed to get him. Yeah, he crushed it. It was so good, and he was so complimentary after we finished, which was, I don't know, a bit like, you know, your dream yogi coming in telling you that your sequence was beautiful or something. Yeah. And you think, fuck, like, this is what I learned from you. This is your sequence that I've fed back to you. So they were good. I mean, I've spoken to like Michio Kaku, Brian Greene, you know, like world-changing physicists. I had a porn star on who won an adult actress award. And yeah, like, then even people that you don't think are going to be outrageous. You know, Will Storr last week, this journalist who's written a new book about the status game, and I said literally had my jaw on the floor for the entire time that I was talking to him. It's cool, and for some reason, like, whatever quirk version of the simulation we're in, whereby this can be considered a job, I'm happy that it's ended up this way.
How did it start? Can we go back? Where did your podcast journey start?
I just guested on someone's show and loved it, and said, I want to do this more, and the best way to do it is if I start my own show. That was it.
So have you always been, to some degree, like, extroverted or more situational as an extrovert?
Yeah, it's very temperamental extroversion, I think. Whatever sort of shop front I've got up here, because I'm very introverted naturally. Love spending time on my own. I get my energy from being on my own. I'm an only child. I'm a solo business owner. But I'm curious, as a lot of people might be, you know, and yeah, it's good. It's a nice way to, because you can have too much of a good thing, especially as introverts. You know that it's good for you to speak to people. You know that it's a good idea to get out of your own head, to force yourself to think in different ways, and to speak as well. You know, not just to ruminate and have this sort of neuroticism just winding around inside of your brain, to bounce those words out of your mouth, and to develop the ability to refine what's in your head into from thought to word as precisely as possible. And that rigor it's a real superpower, and all of that gets facilitated by having conversations on your terms. And, you know, having a podcast, I imagine it must be similar. I don't live with a partner or anything like that, but I imagine if you're married and you both go to work and then you come home on an evening time, and usually there's sort of this daily debrief where, so I've been told, where you say, like, so what happened today and how did it go on, and you did that and you did this, and the only difference is that this one's with different people. It's like polyamory debrief, and it's with different people, and it's a bit more rigorous, and it's recorded and on the internet.
So you've been, I guess, in the public eye since TV show. So TV show, then podcast.
What was the TV show for the guests, the listeners?
Love Island.
Yeah.
So you
yes, I did Take Me Out before Love Island,
well done.
and then I did Take Me Out. And then I did Love Island.
So you've been on. Okay, so you've been on a few. So something about you likes to be seen to some degree, seen or heard, and yet
it's the attention, the desire for attention.
No, but then at the same time, you've talked a lot about. I believe, and maybe I heard this on a chat you had about, like, you know, the sources of happiness, and do you get the happiness from within you or from the stuff you show, you know, extrinsic or intrinsic happiness? So I guess the question is, like, that seems quite an interesting balance, to be so public facing but advocating so much for finding intrinsic happiness.
Well, I don't think that I get my sense of self-worth, or I try not to get my sense of self-worth from how I perform publicly. I have these conversations and I do the things that I do because they genuinely fulfill me, and I would do them if nobody else was listening.
Yeah.
The fact that what I do and genuinely enjoy on my own, and what I can leverage and create prestige and clout for myself, the fact that those happen to be the same thing is purely a quirk of fluke.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. It's just chance. Very much, but, you know, they say that your true calling in life is at the intersection of what you love to do, what you're good at, what society needs, and what you can be paid for. And it just happens to be that all of mine fucking fall on top of each other like 4 5-pence pieces stacked up. So yeah, you are right. In an industry like this where people know who you are and they're following your content and they're talking about stuff that you're doing, it's easy to kind of get distracted. And everyone gets this. You get a new job title or a raise, or you move to a new city and you're this person. You're the new yoga couple that's teaching at this retreat or in this center or has got this program coming out. And you start to be, wow, like this could be my thing. Like people are going to know. And you go, no. That's just a part of you. It isn't you. Like, what are you here for? What are the values? What are the fundamental core virtues that you're trying to speak forward into the world, and let everything emerge out of that? So yes, it is... There is a huge sort of desire for attention that's there, or at least it was in the past, like in my past life. But I try to strip that away as best as I can now. And I think just being aware of it is at least the first step.
And yeah, that is okay. The awareness of it. Because I think someone criticised one of my posts recently. It was talking about ego. And I was doing an extravagant pose. And they were saying, well, surely you're just epitomising what's wrong with yoga. You're doing an extravagant pose. You're making people jealous and envious. And my point back was, well, what doesn't feed ego? Like if I'm on a poster, if I'm on a flyer, if I'm in a book, there's an infinite source of things that will feed ego. But what we need to do is be aware of that and kind of bring ourselves back to some degree and have some of that reflection.
There's a distinction here between playing the game and knowing that it's not about the game. So a lot of people that play the game, they genuinely believe that the game is everything that there is. For instance, right? Like, I don't use the most boring black and white thumbnails for my YouTube videos. I can have Jordan Peterson on the episode, a guy who is intellectually sort of he's highly regarded, right? He's not there wearing a low-cut top or a fucking wife beater, like with fake tan. Like, he's not trying to sexy up or play the game for himself. And yet I decided that I wanted to present that in a way that I know will succeed given the rules of the game, right? And how I know that success can be found. The same thing goes for you guys. Like, who's to say that you posting a photo of you doing something good that enables you to reach more people with a message that you genuinely think is virtuous? Who's to say that that's bad? It's like, don't hate the player, hate the rules of the game, because I don't give a fuck about the game. All that I care about is me playing it. That's all. And I'm going to step out. I'm going to go backstage. I'm going to take my kit off and I'm going to crack on and do my other thing. But yeah, you don't have enough time in an Instagram comment to explain that.
Yeah. And like you in your underwear, you will attract so many people to like that, to interact with that. People that would never have heard of you will be like, he looks good. Okay, what is that? Conversation. Suddenly they're listening to Jordan. And it's changed.
Come to the thirst trap. And it's changed the conversations.
Yeah,
that's it.
And it's changed their life. And the same goes with yoga, doesn't it?
Think about it this way: like, you guys have a unique offering. There are certain things that only you can do, and by not doing that, by not doing the pose that maybe, let's say maybe only 1,000 people on the planet can do one of the poses that you guys can do. By not putting that forward, the world is a less place. Like, your art is not being spoken forth. So what do you want me to do? Because you think that I get clout and prestige from doing this, that I shouldn't put forward something that... like, now we're down to 999 people on the planet that can do this thing. That's dumb.
Yeah, and you always say it's like a way in, don't you? That's not what all yoga is about, fancy poses, not even half of it really, but it attracts people in to then get them on the mat, to then lead them down a path of enlightenment, awareness, whatever it is.
Endless down dog now, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's with using yoga as the same example. People do things like yin yoga, goat yoga, chicken nugget yoga, whatever. Yes, there is a whole cultural appropriation there, and I don't approve of that bit. However, if it gets more people onto the mat, brilliant. And then we do the work. Then we do the proper work. Let's talk a little bit about so let's say the controversial guest. Let's say Jordan Peterson. There are lots of people that don't like him. And I'm going to use Holly as an example. Holly had never heard of Jordan Peterson.
A few months ago, I was introduced to him.
So Holly had no preconception of him. So I'm guessing, a lot of people perhaps in the more left yoga world might really have never heard of him, never really read his book, but automatically disagree with him, which, I like him. And Holly is a perfect example. So Holly's quite hippie, in a sense, no offence. And
I'm not offended.
So you'd never read him, and Holly listened to that podcast on our way back from somewhere.
Yeah, I'm in love with him.
And Holly's in love with him. And I find it really interesting about, I guess, the process of getting the controversial guests on. And I guess multiple parts to this question. First, how do you interact with the shit that you might inevitably get when you get some more controversial people on? And equally, I guess, tell us a little bit about more, have you ever persuaded someone who didn't like that guest to listen to the 2-hour conversation? And it's very hard to hide who you are and what you believe in a 2-hour conversation. And like, have you ever converted someone?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, I'm not really too fussed about what people say. The worst place, I think, for a creator to be in is at that small middle stage. It's when you don't have enough clout to move under your own momentum, when you still see every comment that happens on the stuff that you're doing. Presumably this is online, but the same would occur if you were an artist or a musician. You know, if you're playing a music gig to 40 people, like, it's just about the maximum number of people where you can still watch everyone's reaction to what it is that you're doing. So you still have the neuroticism. You have enough people there for people to hate, like, for there to be a good likelihood that someone hates what you do, but not enough people for more than that to kind of overwhelm them and for you to just feel good about what you do. And yeah, I try not to listen to it, man. Like, I'm working away on the craft of trying to become really, really good. When it comes to controversial guests, like, it's an internet. People are going to hate. There's going to be a hater for absolutely everything that you do. And as far as I can see, just trying to find people who have interesting opinions, interesting stories, stress testing them. You know, if Jordan says something that I don't agree with, then I try my best to put my skeptical hat on and say, well, hang on a second, what do you mean by that? Because what you said earlier on is this, and I'm not really too sure that those two things align. They seem like they contradict to me. And you push back. Like, you can be the voice. You can have someone on that the entire audience hates, but you can deliver a conversation in which you continue to stress test all of their different ideas. And the audience actually goes, well, I still don't agree with anything that they said, but good performance by you being on the offensive, trying to push them into different places. And then, what was the second question? What were you asking? Oh, it was converting people. Yeah, so to be honest, I think the internet struggles massively at saying that it was wrong. I mean, everyone does. Like, this isn't just the internet, but very, very, very few people are compelled to write a comment that says, I thought this thing in the past, and after watching this episode, now I think something different. The people who have had their minds changed probably just do it in silence. And the people who do comment on something, it's probably just reactionary. Like, we don't know how the sample size of all the people that view something on the internet versus the number of people from that decide to comment, we don't know what that particular microcosm of it skews toward. Like, does it skew toward people that are really reactionary? Does it skew toward people that haven't eaten for the last 2 hours? Does it skew towards people that need a dump? Like, you don't know what that selection criteria is, but you know that it's not representative. You know that there are far more people that watch the thing than comment on a thing. Therefore, you have to presume that, fucking hell, there's something going on here outside of the small sample of comments that I see. That being said, I definitely think that the people that listen to the show rather than watch it on YouTube will have been exposed to some new ideas. Like, we've had some really difficult conversations around, you know, what does it mean? What does it mean for non-offending pedophiles to try and find rehabilitation in society at the moment? This is something I think is going to be quite a big talking point as we move forward. And like, that's a really hard conversation to have. You're walking this tightrope. And the number of messages that you get from people that say, dude, like, I never thought of it like that. That's really, really cool. So it's not necessarily someone changing their mind, but the number of times that you just nudge people, you nudge their worldview in a direction that hopefully is more balanced and a little bit more insightful and a bit more self-aware. That's the goal.
And I wonder if people are more open to giving feedback on things that they have no pre-existing view on. Like,
absolutely.
Like, and
absolutely.
That as a talking point has never been on my agenda, and I've never held strong opinions on that. I'm sure I could find some strong opinions in half an hour of conversation, but as it stands, no. Whereas I guess with someone like Jordan, or, you know, maybe topics on gender, or like, people have their opinion already and thus maybe are less willing to even listen in the first place.
Well, they just think that they know, right? And then we all want to posit ourselves as some sort of an authority. It's not cool. No one on the internet ever has commented saying, I don't know. No one. And again, it's this selection criteria. If you don't know, you probably don't comment.
And saying I don't know is actually probably one of the most intelligent things you could say, actually, a lot of the time.
Right.
Do you ever choose guests that you know are going to push you outside of your comfort zone?
Yes. Sometimes it's difficult to find, because what a lot of people mean by outside of comfort zone now would be sort of different political ideology or different worldview. And I'm making a conscious effort right now to do exactly that, to try and find people who counter the narrative that I've come in with over the last couple of years. I've been sort of centrist, and I've had some people on from centre right, and then right. And I want to get some people from the left. I want to hear from some people who are going to rehabilitate the left's, how would you say, their brand, moving away from all of the ideology and the gender and the identity stuff, and moving toward class, differences in class, and trying to stratify out how can we raise up the working class and the underclass people so that they have better quality of life, stuff like that. I want to speak to those people that are moving away from identity and moving toward class-based leftism politics. And I think that's a really interesting conversation. I've had Gad Saad, Jordan Peterson, like these, IDW adjacent and full-on IDW people on my show. That's a new area for me to go into. So yeah, it does push me outside of it. But every single conversation, you've read the book and this person's worked on it for their entire life. It's like by their very nature, you've only got this tiny little insight, this little 1 millimeter squared piece that you're playing with. And then this person comes in and just brain dumps on you, and you go, oh God, now I've got to update my entire operating system to try and see the world in this new way.
So how much research do you do? So for context, for people listening, you do 3 episodes a week, which is a lot. Like, how much research do you do for each guest? And what is the process?
So it's just listen to them, read the book, listen to them. The book usually not like absolutely in full, just that I don't have time, but I'll skim through. I've got quite good at not speed reading. It's like skim reading. So you can kind of see the start of a paragraph move. You just sort of look through it. Not too much. Ooh, there's an interesting one. And then I just sort of, the good shit sticks again. And then when the guest comes on, I try and listen to them. It's a really good idea if you're going to interview someone to listen to what they've done in the past, because you get this sense for how they speak. For instance, with Jordan Peterson, he has this, he does like half beat breaks. So he'll finish speaking and then stop, and you try and get in because you think he's done, and he's not done. He totally turned what he just Brazilian jiu-jitsu'd one of my mates in a conversation who just couldn't get the dance to be gracious and kept on like over the top of each other over and over again. And I was like, right, that's a thing. Like, I need to watch out for that thing that he does when I think that he's fucking finished speaking and he's still going. And then the process is just like, let your curiosity carry you. Like, is that a thing that they said that's interesting? All right, well, I'll ask them about that. And that's how you end up with unique conversations as well, because anyone can read the book and then distill a bunch of questions down from the book, but everybody has the same book. You have a different mind. Okay, so how can you utilize your mind? Just allow the curiosity to drag you forward like a kite in the breeze.
Nice, that's a good way to look at it.
I think Jordan, in his episode with you, I think it was, said that one of his faults is that he tends to interrupt people a lot, and he's working on that. So is there anything that you do that you're currently working on?
Interrupting and giving too many verbal confirmations was one for ages, and I actually learned from Oprah.
Love her.
Weird one to learn from. Learn from Oprah. Like, if you ever watch an interview of her that's an amicable one where they've got a wide shot, she looks like the nodding dog from that Churchill commercial. So she just goes just up and down, nodding up and down. And then she's got different ones. She's got like a single sort of hard one, and then she's got like some quick ones for encouragement. And it just allows you to say to the guest, like, yes, I'm still here. Yes, I'm still listening. No, I haven't fallen asleep. I'm still engaged, but I don't want to say to you to keep going, so you can just continue nodding away. So that's one of them. Because I'm from Newcastle, well, I'm from the north of England, so like is the most commonly used word. Like, it's kind of like this, like, and trying to deprogram, that's hard. I did a TEDx talk at the start of the year, and I got a speech coach
Wow.
And as a part of that, speech and diction coach who's trained in theatre. So we really worked on some verbal tics that I had. I had a very slight lisp, so I've been working on walking down the street in my morning walk, doing these crazy tongue twisters, sort of trying to deprogram some of that, dropping consonants in so I don't say butter, I say butter. And just, just polishing the performance in the same way that you guys might do with your sequences. You've got it down, but where's the final 2 or 3%?
Did you ever, when you were, I guess, refining your voice, as it were, did you ever consider at what point are you losing some identity as well?
Correct.
Because people, there's a line.
Something that a lot of people say, yeah. So personally for me, I think I've got a fairly good idea of where that begins and ends. But realistically, because talking's such an automatic thing, I think that you probably need to consciously push yourself just a little bit further past where you want to be, and then allow your habit to reset you just back down a tiny little bit. You're definitely right. And this year, for a lot of it, I probably have been overly purposeful with my speech, and it's definitely got in the way of things that I've said, because I've been thinking about my diction as I've been trying to think about my presentation as well. And you can't think of, it's really hard. It's hard enough to just talk. That being said, I'm really happy with some of the progress that we've made with that. I'm just about to start to work in a couple of weeks with one of the guys from Brighton Comedy, because I want to have my comedic delivery be better and use more humor. So I'm going to start doing one-on-one comedy coaching. And
amazing.
Maybe that'll make me funny or something. I don't know. So here's the thing, right? Like, nobody treats any other discipline outside of sport with the same amount of commitment that sports people do. Maybe except for top flight musicians, but even CEOs, even the top flight CEOs, they don't treat it in the same way. So think about an athlete, everything that they do is to push them toward the bleeding edge of their performance, right? Their sleep, their nutrition, their mindset, their recovery, the ways that they're running drills, the ways that they're doing conditioning, the way that they're making sure that they have good conversations on a morning, the way that they work on their mental self-talk, everything, the individual components of their performance, the full part components of their performance. But nobody else ever really works that hard. Somebody loves the thing that they do. They really, really love being pick whatever your pursuit is, yogi, whatever it is. But they don't train like an athlete. They train like somebody that likes to do what they like to do, and it's a hobby. And maybe they have varying degrees of commitment. And what I realized at the start of this year was that you're leaving so much on the table there as a competitive advantage. Like, if most people treat their pursuit as a well, why not? If you can just put a tiny little bit more effort in, get a couple of coaches that'll maybe do well, and maybe think about what makes you feel good before you go on an episode. Maybe learn some vocal warm-ups. Maybe make sure that your sleep is set the night before, and just try and do these little things. I was like, there has to be headroom here to try and get ahead. And maybe people with more natural talent wouldn't need to do so much work to achieve the same level of output. But for me, it seems to have worked. And if nothing else, it makes your pursuit feel quite virtuous, because you know that you're committing. And then when you turn up to do an episode, you're like, yeah, like I fucking researched this guy, and I slept well last night, and I trained this morning, and I had a sauna, and I know that I feel mint after I've had a sauna. I've had my cold shower, and I haven't had any caffeine. I know that I'm in the right place. I'm hydrated. I've been to the bathroom. I've done my warm-ups. I'm going to fucking crush this. As opposed to turning up and just being like, well, I was on the lash last night and a bit tired, and I'll get through it. It's like, no, I'm going to have a conversation that people are really going to enjoy, and that he's going to reach millions of viewers.
That's such a refreshing way to look at it. And I agree in that a lot of people, in what they do, they only get better by practicing doing the thing. So yoga teachers do yoga and teach yoga, but the average one wouldn't do anything else. But comparing it to doing a deadlift. If you wanted to deadlift 200k, you wouldn't only deadlift. There's a whole load of things you should be doing. But that isn't including on it's not necessarily on our radar. I've never thought about this podcast in that way. We turn up, we have a good chat, we're all natural, but there are 100% so many ways in which we could refine what we do.
Is the goal then for you to just to keep getting better and better and better at everything that you're doing, or is there an end goal, or is it just to keep growing as a person and just to keep finding ways to hack life and be the best version of you possible?
Yeah, there's no end goal yet, I don't think. It'll be interesting when you get to a bit more, a level of clout that you feel satisfied with. But I don't know whether that ever comes. I'm just enjoying sort of doing what I'm doing at the moment and having conversations and facilitating that.
It sounds like, from what you talk about, that you have a relatively good quality of life. Not in that, you show off watches or and flash stuff that you have. Although that was a very nice Matra thing. That is a bit of flash. But beyond that, you don't really show off stuff. And when I say you have a nice quality of life, it seems like you have space and time, which you have your morning routine, you train, you do the things are good for you. You do the things that for most people would make them inherently happy, like going for a walk, going for a run or the like. What do you think, I guess, is going to change in the future? Because there's going to be more commitments for you. You're going to become more successful in what you do. There's going to be more demand. You're going to be pulled in different directions. I saw you going to London the other week, and travelling for work is a stressful thing. I did it a lot, but didn't necessarily enjoy the process of travelling. Maybe kids and family and stuff will be on the agenda.
Can't wait to be a dad, man. I can't wait to be a dad. I'm gassed. But the way that I see it is, especially because family or having a family is one of the things that's really on my radar at the moment. I mean, I'm not trying to impregnate people just on the street, but it's something that I'm thinking about. And I had a conversation with a buddy, and he was saying, "Look, man, you need to get ready to be the dad that you want to be to your kids. And if that means that I need to pay my dues now, and I need to get my life to the sort of stage where I can chop the amount of work that I do in half and still be able to support a family." Because I don't want to be a dad. My dad worked, he was an engineer who did fucking tons of hours per week because mum had stopped working, very sort of classic working class family. Dad was working, mum was at home looking after me. And he worked his fucking bollocks off. And I want to spend time with my kid all the time. So I need to get my life in order so that I'm ready for that. And you need to be the sort of partner to find the woman to make the kid, and you need to be sufficiently balanced and all that stuff. So it's just if I need to sort of pay some prices now, then so be it. And then when time comes for me to have a higher priority, then this will slot around it.
So trophy husband is no longer a goal.
The trophy husband's still a goal. I mean, if I end up being just some very well looked at, if the driver can come and pick me up and take me to the gym on a morning, and little Rupert can have the nanny come and look after him for an hour while I go out, I'm perfectly happy to be a toy boy. Yeah.
Your journey and everything, you sound like you're so super successful, and our podcast is called Honestly Unbalanced. So I'd love if you could share with us maybe a perceived failure along your journey, something that perhaps you've struggled with in the past.
Yeah, I mean, failure. There's a pretty big litany of them. I've opened a ton of businesses that have lost far more money than ones that I've started over the last couple of years. All of the things that I've done with regards to club promo have definitely ended up shortening my life. So I'm probably going to die before everyone, just because I've had 15 years of late nights. I would definitely say that one of the disadvantages of being me is that it's very hard for me to switch off. The competitive advantage that comes from noticing things and paying attention and really being curious, that's not just a switch that you get to stop having happened. And it is a moderately heavy price to pay, because you wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about a question that you should have asked a guest, and then you berate yourself for the next hour and a half before you go back to sleep. So that's and that's something that I'm struggling to get rid of. Self-consciousness and sort of a lack of confidence in what I'm doing, because I'm constantly around people at the top of their game. I'm constantly with experts and specialists, constantly. And you think, who the fuck am I? Who the fuck are you to speak to Jordan Peterson? Just some bloke chatting away. And I don't know whether that goes. I don't know at what point that leaves. And everyone deals with that, right? Everyone deals with levels of imposter syndrome, and that comes with growth. As you start to trailblaze new ground, inevitably you're doing something that you haven't done before. Therefore, imposter syndrome comes along for the ride. So it's it's a price you pay for persistent growth, but it's not that nice in the moment. So yeah, there are prices to pay. Switching off, I can't take much more than, unless I'm on holiday and I've committed it, I can't really take much more than probably a day off. And I start to feel guilty or ashamed about the fact that I should have been working, I could have done this. But I've got good to the point where I can go on holiday and just be like, right, that's it. It's like out of office is on, so to speak. But even before I go on holiday, the fucking week before, and I'm sure it might be the same with you guys, like the volume of emails that you do, because you realize that you have to do 2 weeks worth of work in 1 week. Like, shit, I need to get like next week's work because I'm away and this week's work done, but I only have 7 days to do it in. So yeah, switching off, that's something I need to develop. Sort of loosening up as well, like as a final thing. And I'm actually going to start trying some more embodiment practices, maybe Tai Chi, which I did for a long time when I was younger, to just get myself out of my own head. Like, you are bowing at the altar of cerebral horsepower to do this. Like, it's just pure cognitive load, trying to think your way into and out of all of the different mazes that you're getting stuck in. And I think that just getting out of that and getting into something that's a bit more of a bodily flow state, it will be really, really good for me. So I'm looking forward to doing that and kind of just learning to switch this off a little bit and kind of just embody a bit more.
Can I imagine there are so many techniques out there that could help you, but I guess you're the kind of guy that would research every technique for a year.
Not really. No. I'd just ask you. I'd just message you and say, hey man, like, I want to get out of my own head. Like, what do you think? What would be a good idea?
Yeah.
Do you practice yoga or meditate?
I meditate every day. Yeah, I've done for a long time. Yoga, I did for a long while. I was on Romwad's books. So I was one of the like display models for those guys, going and doing the sequences. And then I've just found I've got a lower back problem, which does not agree with a lot of the movements because it's so central, right? Like it's the middle of you. And it doesn't agree with a lot of the stuff that I do with yoga. So I would need to find something that accounted for that, and then going and doing public classes and being the guy at the back that goes, excuse me, I can't do a forward fold because of my disc bulge. Like, you don't want to be that guy. But that's a fairly pissy excuse.
But it's finding that right teacher for you in that regard. Just to anyone out there, like yoga can be horrific for the low back if it's taught in a certain way. If you're taught to constantly compress and load it and kind of go into extension in upper back whilst tilting the pelvis forwards, it's horrific. So it's finding the teacher, me.
Can't do Adam's class.
Link in show.
Yeah, no, indeed, that doesn't actually teach like that. So I think yoga can be harmful, but there is a right style that suits everyone at their point in their life, and it kind of meets them there. So yeah, it can be harmful, but it can be equally wonderful as well.
I'd love to hear about your morning routine. Adam said it's very extensive. So would you mind sharing what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I have a system. I'm actually going to release a course on it because so many people ask. It's 4 buckets, which is move, reflect, learn, and prepare. Get up and do a walk, salt and lemon in water when I get back, sit down, journal and plan for the day, which takes about 5 minutes. It's just, what's the biggest task? What's the one biggest thing that I need to do? A couple of things I'm grateful for, a couple of intentions. Meditate for about 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes it's been unguided for a long time, and I started to get a bit frustrated. So I'm now actually on Sam Harris's Waking Up app, which I think is really, really good. Breathwork using State Shift, which is another app run by ex-guest Brian McKenzie, which is awesome. Just pre-programmed breathwork sequences. There's 4 different pathways there. Then read. That tends to usually be whoever I'm podcasting with on the evening time. So that's another 15 minutes. And then prepare, which is just sort my food, do my cooking for the day, pack my bags if I need to be going somewhere. And that usually happens whilst listening to a podcast. Again, usually the guest that I've just read. So it's like a 10-minute walk, 5 minutes journaling, 10 minutes breathwork, 15 minutes meditation, 15 minutes reading. It's like within an hour. Like within the space of an hour, you've got it all done. But you realize that most of the personal growth stuff that you would have put off for the rest of the day, you've crushed it, and most people aren't out of bed yet. And I get up at like 7 a.m. Well, maybe not most people. Most people are probably at work by the time that I finish my morning routine. But it's something that I really enjoy. Like, I genuinely look forward to waking up on those days, and it makes me feel like I want to crush it. And the advantage of it is that even if the rest of the day goes to complete shit and just life comes and dicks you all over for the rest of the day, you know that you got your stuff in this morning. Before the world came to impose its will on you, before the fucking WhatsApp messages and the emails came flooding in, like, you know that you got it done. It's like, okay, I meditated today. I got some wins in. And it's the same thing, going back to the very start. It's the same thing with the alarm clock, with hitting snooze. Like, look, like I won that first battle of the day. I made my bed. I went for my walk. I had my water. I did this. Like, that's it. Those are fucking wins. And a lot of the time, you know, you can go through a whole day and not get any of those wins. So starting them with a bunch
and
back to back.
Does your phone appear at any point there? Or is the phone out of the way for that first hour?
So sleeping with your phone outside of your bedroom is the number one life hack for everybody. Like, it's so good. That being said, if you want to use State Shift or Sam Harris or stuff like that, you need the phone in your hand. So you kind of have to start repurposing it in somehow. But I have all the notifications off, so it means that the screen is blank. I also have the apps that I use in my morning routine on the home screen and nothing else. So again, when I open up the phone, there's no distractions, there's no temptations to go elsewhere. You are treating yourself like a heroin addict of some kind, but that's kind of what it is. And then I also have a separate phone for social media that I do for normal stuff. So like the social media phone stays in a drawer, and then the actual one that I walk around with is the one that I do my morning routine with.
That is a good idea.
And even a third phone, like a third one to have in the bedroom for the apps, etc.
Just for that. I mean, that would be...
Well, even an iPod, because iPods get apps, don't they, I believe? Like the old school iPod with a screen.
Ancient.
Dude, I got an app. I've got an iPhone 6, which is like fucking ancient, apparently. And I've got one of those, and that's what I use for social media, for just posting and checking Instagram and doing stuff like that. And it's only got Wi-Fi, so I can't take it out of the house. And once I'm out of the house, if I'm at dinner, I can't check anything. Open up my phone and be like, I'm not going to check emails.
Perfect.
And so just put it away again. Yeah.
That's such a good idea.
There is something you wrote somewhere. I forget where I saw it. It says, so about the podcast, it was, how can you be all that you want to be in a world that is trying to stop you? I'm intrigued by kind of sentiment behind that. You recall saying that or writing that somewhere?
Say it again.
Very, very slightly. How can you be all that you want to be in a world that's trying to stop you?
And I think it was on on a website called ReadX or something.
Readwise,
where it was almost like a forum-like thing.
Oh, so that is that's a really fucking cool tool, actually. If anybody uses Kindle, if anybody reads on Kindle, Readwise takes your highlights from Kindle and then re-delivers them to you in a morning email.
Oh.
So it just sporadically does it. You can also use it for spaced repetition if you want to try and learn them. So the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, it's all got that programmed in the same way as flashcard apps do. So yeah, every morning I wake up and I have 4 quotes that are my highlights, and it just randomly chooses some of them, and some of them are from random books from years ago, and some of them are from something that I read recently. Readwise.io, it's run by a couple of buddies. Really cool tool.
That's cool.
Yeah, how can you be all that you can be? Read it again to me.
So how can you be all that you want to be in a world that is trying to stop you?
Well, I think the argument there is that society and culture and the people that are around you aren't you. What they are usually is an aggregate of what everybody else wants, because we're mimetic beings, right? Like, we try and copy everyone else, and what that causes is for everyone to sort of coalesce into this big sort of vanilla grey sludge in the middle. And it causes people to curb their quirks and their weirdnesses. And it's hard. Like, it's hard to strike out and do things that are different, especially in the UK. UK is a really good example because we have tall poppy syndrome here. Like, you try and do something different at school or at college, or you begin a new business, and there isn't really tons of support. They'll keep your feet on the ground, which is good for you. You're not going to have an ego that runs away, but you're going to be so scared and you're going to lack so much confidence, at least in terms of what I see. Whereas you look at somewhere like America, where the sky's the limit, what's brilliant for them is they have loads and loads of support, but people can have their egos run out of control and they struggle to deal with discomfort because no one's ever told them that they can't do something or can't achieve something. So, you know, the Atlantic giveth with one hand and taketh away with the other, depending on what side of it you are. I don't know, Matt. I just think that a lot of people would do better if they were able to access what they genuinely want to do, like who you genuinely are, strip away the societal norms and the paths of least resistance and the way that you've dealt with past traumas and the fears that you have around acceptance. Like, if you were just able to do that, and I can't, like, I don't. I still tons all of the time throughout this entire conversation, I'll have compromised things that I woulda, shoulda, coulda said, because I think about how it's going to land or about what it makes me look like or all of that. It's just inbuilt into us. But yeah, getting as close to being the person that you're supposed to be as possible, I think, is probably a pretty good starting point if you're feeling a bit lost. And in terms of finding happiness, it's probably not a bad route either.
And was that one of your sentiments that when you created the podcast over the years that you wanted to some degree empower people to go down that?
Just life doesn't come with an instruction manual, man. Like, it's so fucking hard. And I was really, really lost, especially as a young guy. I didn't have... So, only child again. There's quite a big delta between our generation and our parents, so that you don't really have those role models there. And I just wanted an instruction manual. I just wanted someone to tell me how to deal with the breakup, or how America works, or what coal is, or why I should be bothered about the environment, or I just wanted to know these things, and that was kind of the show. Like, learn about yourself and the world around you. Like, that's it. And the fact that I get to learn out loud and bring the audience along for the ride seemed like the easiest way to do it.
So cool.
Have you had the owner of School of Life on your podcast? I forget his name.
Alander Botton. Yeah. Alander Botton. Yeah, he's a friend of a friend. I'm in his emails, but I haven't got him on yet. He actually seems to have taken a bit of a step back over the last couple of years. I've been to see him live, and he was phenomenal. Yeah. I would love to get him on. He's not so much recently, but he really shaped my direction when I first started.
He'd be an amazing guest. We'll do some quick fires now, so that's all right. Do you want to kick on?
Am I going first? Oh, you share 3 insights that you learn every Monday, so perhaps you could share an interesting fact of the week that you've learnt.
Ooh. 17% of young people think that approaching anyone you want to date in public constitutes harassment, but 90% of women still want the man to make the first move.
Oh,
brilliant.
Cool, right. I'm keeping hold of you, Holly. You're staying with me. I got a ring on it. All right, next question. Is anything particularly sacred for you? Like, any moment of your day, sacred? Like, you're not changing that?
Morning routine is there. So even if I have to be out of the door at 5:30 a.m., I'll sit down and do 1 minute's meditation.
You put a little quote on your Instagram by Morgan Housel, I hope I've said that right, which is Housel, sorry. People who tend to be exceptionally good at one thing are normally exceptionally bad at others. Is there one thing you're exceptionally good at and one thing you're exceptionally bad at?
Talking and switching off.
Cool. And then maybe finally, well, no, you only have to do a motivational quote, but I want to know, what would you do more of? Like, your life is a bit spacious, but maybe not that. From what you said, is there anything you would like to do more of that you don't currently do?
Have fun.
Oh.
Like, have fun. Like, with play, find play, because a lot of it's work at the moment. And even though my work is play, there's still like a purpose to it.
Yeah, you need a line.
Yeah, finding something that doesn't have a telos to it, that isn't going in a direction that you're just doing it for the sheer sake of it. I'm looking forward to doing that. I think I'm on the cusp of being able to purpose life into that way. I really can't wait for that.
And could you leave us with some kind of motivational quote or something, a quote that you always come back to that you love?
So this is from Jordan Peterson, and it's not motivational at all.
It's fine.
It's, do not practice what you don't want to become. And what it reminds us is that you don't get to make the choice about not making a habit. You simply get to choose what habit you want to make. Every action that you take contributes to you being one type of person in the future. Do you want to be the sort of person that hits snooze, or the sort of person that doesn't? Do you want to be the sort of person that cheats on your partner or doesn't? Do you want to be the sort of person that goes to the gym or doesn't? And every time that you make a decision, you are choosing a vote. You are placing a ballot into the box for that type of life in the future and that type of person, or a different one. There's no voting. You are voting all the time. Even not voting is a vote. So what's the sort of decision that you want to make? And that don't practice what you do not want to become. That really reminds us that be careful with the things that you do. Be careful with the habits that you make. It's important.
That was a brilliant ending. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us.
And what would you like people to know about you and podcast and your reading list, etc.? Tell us what you want people to find.
Oh yeah, so if you want a list of 100 books that you should read before you die, go to chriswillex.com/books. It's free, it's beautiful. It took me absolutely fucking ages to make, and the designer crushed it. So if you're looking for new book ideas, like the most impactful, important books that I've ever read, and then just search Modern Wisdom wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Chris Williamson YouTube and everywhere else.
Thank
you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Honestly unbalanced.